Welcome to this guide to UK self-sponsorship. Now, if you're looking to move to the UK and run your own business, one of the biggest early tasks is getting the right visa. Now, one of the potential routes you may have come across is self-sponsorship through your own business. Now, self-sponsorship is becoming increasingly interesting as an immigration route for business owners, and that's for a number of reasons, which we'll look at in this video. We'll also look at the actual steps involved to apply for a visa through self-sponsorship. My name's Jill, and I'll explain the general rules and framework you need to understand to be able to sponsor your own visa through your own company. Now, it's important to say this video is for general information only. If you have a question about your situation, then get in touch with us at Davidson Morris. We're an SRA regulated law firm and we offer fixed fee telephone consultations without commitment. Call our welcome team, book a slot with a qualified advisor and get your specific questions answered. You'll find details on how to book in the description below. Now, to come to the UK to start or run your own business, you need the right visa. One option that's grown in interest is self-sponsorship, and there's a number of reasons for this. Over recent years, the UK government has tightened routes for foreign national business owners, entrepreneurs and investors. The Tier 1 entrepreneur and investor visas are long closed, and the startup and innovator route are no longer open to new applicants either. So the main business visa left in that space is now the innovator founder route, and frankly, take-up has been quite modest since it was launched. To apply, you first need endorsement for your business from an endorsing body, and that's an organisation authorised by the Home Office to endorse innovator founders. You have to be able to show your business meets the specific criteria of being innovative, viable and scalable, which can be challenging given the mature nature of the UK market. But endorsement is a mandatory prerequisite before you can actually apply for the Innovator Founder visa. And there are no guarantees. If you fail the endorsement stage, you can't apply for the visa. And even with endorsement secured, you still have to go through the visa application process and prove you're eligible to the Home Office. If you are successful and manage to secure an Innovator Founder visa, you have to maintain contact with the endorsing body while you have the visa. And the endorsing body has to monitor business performance and it has powers to withdraw endorsement if there are concerns. If endorsement's withdrawn, the visa would usually be cut short. So given these wider practical realities of the Innovator Founder, it's not hard to understand why self-sponsorship is emerging as an alternative. But self-sponsorship does come with its own eligibility and management demands, and also Home Office oversight. We'll go to look onto this later. So what is self-sponsorship? Let's start right out by saying there's no official self-sponsorship visa. You won't find it in the immigration rules and you won't see it on application forms. It's effectively applying for a skilled worker visa with your company acting as the sponsor. So what this means in practice is that you set up or acquire a UK company, and then that company sponsors you for your skilled worker visa. Now, the skilled worker visa is the UK's main work route, and it needs sponsorship by a licensed employer, and under self-sponsorship, the employer is your business. But you have to meet all the skilled worker visa requirements for self-sponsorship to be an option. So, to understand self-sponsorship, you first need to understand the basics of the skilled worker visa. The skilled worker visa is the UK's main work immigration route. It's for people with a job offer in an eligible skilled role from a UK employer that holds a sponsor licence. Now, under self-sponsorship, that employer would be your own UK company. You can stay in the UK for up to 5 years. Then if you're eligible, you can either apply to extend your stay and then eventually after qualifying period apply for indefinite leave to remain, which can then put you on the path to British citizenship. And with a skilled worker visa, you may also be able to bring your close family members with you as dependents. So that's your spouse or partner and children under 18. Now, the main restriction with the skilled worker visa is that you would need to stay employed and sponsored by the same employer. Or if you change employer, you would usually have to apply for a new skilled worker visa. But this shouldn't be an issue if you're being sponsored by your own company. Now, the company would also need to apply for and retain a sponsor license, and this involves committing to quite onerous administrative and compliance obligations. So self-sponsorship really is just a way of applying for a skilled worker visa through your own business. So how do you go about making this happen? Let's look at the key steps to self-sponsorship. Now, there are 3 main steps to self-sponsorship. First, you set up your own UK limited company or you acquire an existing company. Next, the company will need to apply for a sponsor license for permission to employ foreign nationals under the skilled worker route. And finally, with a sponsor license in place, you can apply for your skilled worker visa with the company acting as your sponsor. Let's look at each stage in turn. So you can set up and register a UK company from overseas or from within the UK. It's an online process via the Companies House website. You'll need to provide specific details about the company and yourself. Now, for self-sponsorship, the key consideration here relates to company directorship, because when you register a limited company, you have to appoint at least one director of the business. Now, this director does not have to be a UK resident or British citizen, but when the director is a non-UK resident, it could have implications when you come to apply for the sponsor license, because your sponsor license key personnel are subject to specific eligibility rules that are stricter than general company law rules. So you'll need to plan your appointments with the sponsor license in mind, because when you apply for the license, the Home Office will examine the company's sponsorship compliance capability, and that includes key appointments and proof the sponsor's duties can be properly discharged. And this may be more difficult to prove where there are non-residents appointed. You may want to take advice here if you're unsure about who to appoint, because you need to ensure you're setting up the company with an appropriate choice of officers and key personnel to avoid undermining your sponsorship strategy from the outset. Now, with the business registered, you can look at the next stage of the self-sponsorship process, which is applying for the sponsor license. The requirements to apply for a UK skilled worker sponsor license are that the company is a genuine business operating lawfully in the UK, that the business is capable of carrying out its sponsor compliance duties, and the business is offering genuine employment that meets the salary and skill level requirements of the skilled worker route. Now, the application process itself involves an online application form and submitting supporting documents. But before you even look to complete the application, you'll need to take steps to ensure that these requirements are actually met. So first, the business must be genuine and operating lawfully in the UK. Now, to prove this, you'll need to submit a minimum of 4 documents under the Sponsor Guidance Appendix A, plus additional information for the skilled worker route, which we'll pick up on shortly. The specific documents you'll need to provide will depend on the circumstances, and the different tables within Appendix A set out the requirements. But as an example, if your business has been operating for under 18 months, it will be classed as a startup, and you'll need to submit proof of a UK business bank account with a bank registered by the Financial Conduct Authority and the Prudential Regulation Authority in the UK. Other documents could include proof of PAYE, employer registration with HMRC, and the most recent annual accounts. Now, that said, technically speaking, the business won't need to be actively trading or to have generated revenue to qualify for a sponsor license, but you still have to meet the Appendix A requirements. Now, in practice, this usually means having a detailed business plan for the UK company, being able to show sufficient investment funds for the company. So while a minimum investment is not a mandatory requirement, it can be highly persuasive for these purposes. Also, showing that you've already undertaken initial business activities in the UK, such as finding premises or setting up a website, or showing that you have an existing overseas business which is actively trading and that you have a business case for a UK branch. Now, along with documents in Appendix A, there are other documents you will need to provide to support your application. And these will depend on the circumstances, but usually include an explanation as to why your company is applying for a sponsor license, information about the sector your business is in, a current hierarchy chart detailing any owner, director and board members, a list of employees and job titles if the business has 50 employees or less, details about the jobs the company is filing under the license, and if the role hasn't been advertised, information about how the person to be sponsored was identified as the most suitable for the role. Now, under self-sponsorship, this is going to require specific evidence to show that the sponsored role you intend to take up is genuine and essential to the business, and how you are best suited for this under a genuine sponsorship arrangement. Again, take advice on how best to approach this in your submission. Now, the next requirement for a sponsor license is that the business is capable of meeting the immigration compliance duties. Put simply, sponsor license holders have to have HR systems and processes in place to ensure duties in relation to reporting, record keeping, and monitoring sponsored workers are met. The Home Office has powers to carry out compliance audits on sponsor license holders, and in many cases, they may carry out an audit or inspection prior to approving the license application. So you really have to ensure that this is all in order and at the required standards before you apply. It's usually best practice to take professional advice to be sure you're meeting all of these duties before you apply to reduce the risk of refusal. Now, one requirement to highlight here is in the context of self-sponsorship is key personnel. Sponsor license holders have to appoint individuals into specific key personnel roles who will have certain responsibilities to manage the license on an ongoing basis. These are the authorising officer, who will ultimately be responsible for the license and compliance. There's the key contact, who will be the point of contact between the Home Office and the UK business, and at least one level 1 user who will administer the license on a day-to-day basis using the sponsorship management system. Now, when you're deciding who to appoint into these roles, you will have to name them when you make the license application. Bear the following in mind. These roles can be held by the same person or by different people. They should usually be paid members of staff or office holders and be UK-based most of the time. And at least one level 1 user needs to be an employee, partner or director and a settled worker. Now, the authorising officer should have sufficient oversight of the UK business to discharge compliance duties. Now, depending on the circumstances, it may be possible to engage a third-party agent to act as a UK director and as an authorising officer, but you will still need to be able to show that they have sufficient involvement and oversight over the UK business. So if you are considering this option, get professional guidance on how this could work in practice for your company. Now, with all that in place, you can proceed with the online application form and submitting your supporting documents. Sponsor license applications typically take around 8 weeks to be processed unless you pay for the fast track service. Processing can take longer if the Home Office asks to carry out a pre-license audit or inspection. Now, if your sponsor license application is approved, the company can then assign you a certificate of sponsorship. Now, this is a unique reference number that you need to make the skilled worker visa application itself. The final stage for self-sponsorship is to apply for your skilled worker visa. Now, to be eligible for this visa, you have to meet the criteria and attain the 70 points. And you do this by having a job offer from a UK company with a valid sponsor license, which has assigned you a valid certificate of sponsorship. You have to show that you will be paid at or above the relevant minimum salary threshold and the going rate for the occupation. And you'll find this in Appendix Skilled Occupations. Now, currently, the standard minimum salary level is £41,700 per year, but lower thresholds may apply depending on the circumstances. The job offer also has to be for a genuine vacancy, and the role has to qualify in terms of skill, which means it has to be at least level 6 on the Regulated Qualifications Framework, or RQF, which is the system in the UK to classify and regulate qualifications. RQF level 6 is graduate level or an equivalent qualification, and new skilled worker applications now normally require RQF 6 unless the role is on the temporary shortage list or the worker falls under special transitional provisions, when a lower RQF 3 to 5 may be allowed. Now, we go into more detail about skilled worker requirements in our skilled worker visa video. It's a complex immigration route, but it's absolutely essential to get it right. So take a look at that video if you want to learn more about the skilled worker requirements, or get in touch and book to speak with one of our legal advisors if you want to ask about your own specific circumstances. Now, in your visa application, you also have to demonstrate knowledge of the English language to the required level, which is level B2 or A-level equivalent for applications from the 8th of January 2026. For applications before then, before the 7th of January 2026, it's level B1. This is GCSE equivalent. Again, we cover this in detail in a video guide to the higher English language requirement, so take a look to find out more. Now, there are common risks and challenges of the self-sponsorship visa process, and it's really important to frame self-sponsorship in the spirit of the rules. A sponsor license can't be used for permission to sponsor yourself in a personal capacity. Licenses are only granted if there is a UK business that has real activity and a real job that serves the business. If you try to sponsor yourself for something that only benefits you and not the company, the Home Office can refuse the licence application or even revoke the licence later. So the job role has to be tied to genuine wider business activity. This means one of the main challenges for self-sponsorship applicants is proving the role has not just been created for the purposes of immigration or to facilitate a visa. There has to be a genuine vacancy, and you will need to submit evidence to support this as part of your application. If you're unsure, take advice. The next area is key personnel. Your main level 1 user needs to be within the business and be a settled worker. This means they have indefinite immigration status in the UK, such as a British citizen, ILR holder, or someone with EU settled status. Third, check the eligibility thresholds. Skill and salary levels have increased. The English language level increases also in 2026. So take a look at our other video updates and make sure that you're following the current rules. So those in a nutshell are the 3 key stages to self-sponsorship for business owners. You set up a UK company, you apply for a sponsor license, and then you apply for the skilled worker visa. So yes, self-sponsorship offers a viable route to running your own business, but you'll need to meet all of the requirements for sponsorship and for the skilled worker visa. You then need to comply with the visa and sponsorship conditions for the duration of the visa period. Now, realistically, most applicants will take professional advice to help with the complexities of the criteria and the application process. So if you're interested in more information, there's tons of guidance on the Davidson Morris website, and you can book a fixed fee telephone consultation with one of our immigration advisors.